Cthulhu Wars by Peterson Games. Now here's a game that basically can be categorized as an area control game with asymmetric factions, sort of a dudes on the map. Mind you, it's a big dudes on the map game. The box is huge, the units are massive, they're well done, the detail is great on them. The base game comes with 4 factions. It comes with Crawling Chaos, Yellow Sign, Great Cthulhu, and Black Goat. And between the 4 of them, just what's in the base game, you've got a lot of gameplay. It's got a lot of legs, and you'd be perfectly fine just playing with that. Now, at the time when this came out, I think it was 2015. It was a big deal. It was a Kickstarter, and people were kind of all over it in terms of, wow, this looks awesome, and also this is too much. It's too expensive. The pieces are too big. For an untested game, that sort of thing. And I sort of, at the time, I had a lot going on in terms of board games and what I had coming in, and what I was paying for, and just couldn't afford to do it myself at the time, so I didn't. And I figured, I'll pass on it. I was familiar with the name, with Sandy Peterson from work with. I played Call of Cthulhu role playing game an awful lot when I was in high school. The name was trusted, and I figured, okay, we'll wait and see what happens, right? The pieces look great, but there was a lot of expansions too, a lot of boxes, and I just figured, without diving into it completely, reading everything, I figured, okay, let's just wait and see what goes on and how much of this is necessary, because I tallied up the bill. The initial all-in was quite a bit. You're looking at hundreds of dollars, and I just didn't have it in me at the time for, to get into kind of a hobby game, right? So Onslaught 2 came along, and I missed the deadline on that one. So I put, a notice for, let me know when this thing becomes available again. And then Onslaught 3 kicked around in 2017, and I basically at that point started trying to acquire everything for this game, and that was a pain. It was hard to come by. I didn't do the all-in for Onslaught 3. I did the all-in expansion material, but then I went and I sourced out I didn't want to wait, to get the base game, and I wanted to see, well, I'll just go buy the other stuff now, and that proved to be a challenge. A lot of sites had listed, availability, but their availability was based on the Kickstarter that was just released, so it would be another year or so before any of that was actually fulfilled from online shops and what have you, right? So, long story short, it was a lot of acquiring and running around picking things up from different retailers and physical retailers, online stores and whatnot. But needless to say, I did get everything that I wanted to. I don't have all of the game by any stretch, but I have more than enough. But anyways, we're going to stick with the base game. You'll see some of the upgraded components that I use. The upgraded cultists, the original ones are perfectly fine, but I like the faction-specific ones. The gates, I use the plastic gates. The cardboard ones work just fine. So some of the bling, the board that I'm using is the bigger board, the upgraded one, because the one that comes with the base game can get crowded when you have neutrals, and more than 4 factions playing. Even with 4, it fills up pretty quickly. But again, you're fine just with the base game. If that's all you want to do, I believe that's $200 that gets you into the game, and you can stop right there. But there's a lot going on in this game. So as I mentioned, it's asymmetrical. Every faction has the same unit, one unit, which is a cultist, and that's the lowest level unit required in order to do certain things. They are what provide you with power that allow you to do actions throughout the game. But beyond that, every faction has a unique faction ability, either 1 or 2 unique great old ones that have their own unique abilities, and they have their own monsters, either 2 or 3 monsters, and in some cases a terror, which is a beast that is somewhere between a great old one and a monster. But all of these have unique abilities. Most of those unique abilities are going to be unlocked through acquiring these spell books. Your faction sheet will indicate there are 6 slots, what you need to do to get a spell book for that slot. They're all different. They don't need to be done in any particular order. But if you, like, for example, Black Goat here, I'm looking at it, have units in 4 areas. As soon as you have units in 4 areas, you can choose one of the Black Goat spell books and place it on there, and then you gain access to that ability on the spell book. More often than not, quite often, those abilities that are unlocked are tied directly to a unit that you already have. Now, you can recruit these units without having access to the spell book. You just won't have access to the special ability. And in most cases, that's going to mean it does very little in a game for you, other than being a meat shield and maybe throwing some combat dice. But other than that, you're going to want those spell books. You can't win the game unless you have all your 6 spell books. So getting access to those spell books is going to be not only something you want to do to gain access to all those abilities for your units and the spell abilities, but you can't win the game until you have done that. And once you've done that, you also unlock some abilities like the Endless Battle ability, which allows you to have multiple battles in a turn without spending power every time, that sort of thing, right? The endless battle or whatnot. But anyways, the game itself, the gameplay is really simple. Where things get... I'm not going to say complicated, but where they become deep in terms of complexity, it's all of those, the interaction of all those abilities, the special faction abilities, Great Old One abilities, and how they interplay between those in the different portions of the phase, what they can do to certain units, and the rule book. While it's about this thick, the rules themselves are very simple. There's not a whole lot of rules. A lot of it is gameplay examples and timing examples because of the timing of when abilities can take place in a phase. And this is where all the strategy comes in. The game is very deep, very rich. I've yet to find anything. We've played this, I don't know how many times, where I can point to and say, that's broken. It doesn't work like that. Because the thing is, you see that crop up every now and again online. You'll see a discussion started with somebody who will say, it's impossible to win with this faction. I see that quite a bit. And basically what's happening is that, a person is playing that faction against somebody else who's playing another faction. They're always playing the same combo and the same things are happening to them every time, right? So they're missing something that they need to do. So what we do is we just randomize, put all of the, whether they're tokens or occultists into the bag, and everybody randomizes their faction so that you can get used to playing different factions. You can get used to facing off against other factions. And then once you have more experience in that, you start to see ways to thwart just about everything in the game, and also ways that you can win. But nothing is set in stone. You're constantly interplaying and working with your opponents to try to bring somebody down, all the while trying to make sure that you're achieving your goals to win the game. And everybody's going to have different paths to victory. That being said, like I said, the game is very simple. Basically, you have an action phase where you pay a certain amount of power to do different actions. There's not a lot of actions that you can do. There are some specific ones that you can get out of cards or factions, but for the most part, here they are. Spend 1 power to recruit 1 cultist. You need cultists to gain power. Spend X amount of power to summon 1 monster. Your faction sheet will tell you. You need to have a controlled gate in order to do that. Spend X amount of power to awaken your Great Old One, or 2 if you have 2 of them. That'll tell you on your faction sheet what needs to be done. Spend 3 power to create 1 gate. You also require a cultist to do that. Spend 1 power to move 1 unit. If you want to move 2 units, you got to spend 2 power. Move 3 units, spend 3 power. Spend 1 power to battle. So if you can cohabitate in an area without instigating combat, just being in the same area as an opponent doesn't necessarily mean that a fight breaks out. If you want to, you have to spend 1 power to do that. And, you're probably going to, ask for trouble, but that's part of the game. Spend 1 power to capture a cultist. Now, that's where there's some fairly unique unit hierarchy that comes into the game. You have your cultists that are at the bottom. Then you have monsters. If a monster is guarding a cultist, another monster can't, capture that cultist. If you have 2 monsters and cultists, nobody can be captured. But if you have a Great Old One, then you can capture a cultist. And I believe terrors can too. Terrors are kind of a unique unit. Not every faction gets access to them. A lot of the terrors that exist in the game are neutral ones. The ancients have a unit that's actually, because they don't have a Great Old One, they have a unit that is a terror, but I believe a terror outranks a monster in terms of capturing, right? But I'd have to check into that afterwards. But anyways, those are the actions that you can do, and then you've got some unique ones that different factions and their units can do, but not a whole lot. That is the heart of the game. And then what happens is once everybody is done spending all their power, And you first player will determine which direction the game is going to go, and you will follow that. But not everybody will have power left at the same time. You could be spending power at a different rate than your opponent. Some factions will allow them to skip turns so that they can do some combos once everybody's done and they're powerless to stop them. That's always really an interesting part of the game. A lot of strategy and how to use your power. You maybe do some of the lower costing actions and wait to the end of the turn to build that gate, just so you can react to somebody. Maybe summon a monster if you see that you're left vulnerable in an area where you need a gate, because if somebody rolls in and you just have cultists there and they capture your cultists, they can take your gate. They bring in cultists, and there's really a lot of strategy in the game, and it's really quite deep that way. So you're going to want to pay attention to how you're expending your power. And what you're doing to gain it back, right? So once all of that's done, everybody's done with their power, then you go into the gather power phase, and then you get 1 power per cultist, 2 power per controlled gate. Everybody gets 1 power per gate that is uncontrolled, so to symbolize, the raw energies coming in, without any direction that all the factions can draw upon, and then power from any special abilities, right? And then there's a bit of a catch-up mechanism in the game as well. If the person with the least amount of power can move up to half of the person with the most. So if somebody in the game has 17, I can't remember if you round up or you round down, but let's say you're rounding down at 16, then the lowest person, if they had 2, they could move up to 8, right? So it's a bit of a catch-up mechanism, and it works. I haven't really seen it be gamey, but it does work. So anyways, then you gain your power. You determine first player. Whoever has the most power is first player, and they can determine once again which direction the gameplay will flow. So that's a good way to give the old screw you to the guy to the left who may be on your tail in terms of victory. Then it moves on to the doom phase, and then you get 1 doom, and this is how the game is won or lost, is in the doom phase. The first player to either get to or pass 30 doom wins the game, and then it ends. You get 1 doom per controlled gate. Then you have the option to do a Ritual of Annihilation. Now, what that means is that you can spend power equal to the number listed on the track, the Ritual of Annihilation track. It'll start, depending on the number of players, at 5 or 6 or whatever. So let's say you spend 5 power. You can then score doom again for your gates, and then also you can take these tokens out of a bag, these Elder Signs that have a value of 1, 2, or 3 on them, equal to the number of faction Great Old Ones that you have in play. So if you have 1 Great Old One, you can take 1. So basically you're doubling your doom points for that turn. And if you have a Great Old One in play, you're gaining points that you can either keep secret, you can reveal them, and you can keep them secret or reveal them when you're gaining enough points to actually win the game. And quite often that's the way it works. So you can get lucky and pull 3 tokens out of the bag, and they can all be a 3 value, and you've got 9 doom points. So you just need to get anywhere, near, you just basically get to 21, right? So, but there is, that hazard of doing a Ritual of Annihilation in that, let's say you only have 10 power and you're spending 6, it goes up every time somebody does it. So if you're spending 6, you're left with 4, you don't have a lot of reaction, and I've seen it happen in many games where you've ritualed too early or you just didn't have enough and then you got knocked down, knocked off of a couple of gates, you had no power to respond, and then you're gaining almost no power. So you really have to be careful how you do that. And not only that, the game ends when the Ritual of Annihilation reaches the end of its track, when it gets to, depending on the number of players that you have, I believe 4 players, I think after it hits 10 or whatnot. But anyways, so there is some hazard in doing that, and an outright folly at times. So you can leave yourself basically high and dry by doing a ritual too soon, or basically not having enough power, or you can prematurely end the game, right? So you really have to be careful when you're doing that. And then any special events or abilities that are available in the game that speak of doing in the doom phase, then that's it. And then you go to the next turn and you repeat. So that being said, it's fast. The game is only about 4 or 5 turns, so you really have to be careful that you're not, it's not Axis and Allies. It's not, Risk, where you can just go and battle like mad and just, have risky battles for no reason just to try and take over space. You really have to think about why you're trying to take this area from an opponent, what you want to do when you take it. Can you afford to lose these units because they're expensive? And like I said, the game's only going to last 4 or 5 turns. So quite often you can find that you're in a position where you've spent too much power, you've sacrificed too many units in combat for really no gain, and then you've left yourself with little or nothing in terms of currency or units in the next following turns, 1 or 2 turns, in which the game is being decided, right? So again, strategy is very deep in this game. The base game, you're just fine, but once you add in all of the expansions, there are neutral monsters, there are neutral great old ones, neutral spell books, neutral terrors, and these are all available in different expansions. What we do, I have quite a few of them, is we'll just lay out a few for that game. We'll try to randomize them and use different ones as we play, and then that way you can familiarize yourself with just a few, but it changes the way the game is played depending on which ones are in that game, right? Some of them won't get used, some will be, and it'll change the way a faction is playing, because you're maybe used to, okay, Cthulhu is going to do this, but then all of a sudden, a Great Cthulhu faction is recruiting, different great old ones that will unlock different abilities based on their spells. So the interplay between the abilities and the neutrals, the spell books, and all of the different monsters and whatnot is very, very interesting and deep, and it makes for a fun experience. And like I said, I haven't seen anybody complain. The only thing is, it takes a while to set up. There's a lot of stuff with this game. The production is massive. The bits are huge. The minis are huge. And it takes a while to stow everything, and I need a better solution for that. But that's a minor problem. Other than that, it's just a wonderful game. I think it's a lot of fun. Nobody objects when it comes up. It's a regular in our group to hit the table. So that being said, Cthulhu Wars, great game. There's I believe a final onslaught, it's called, that it will be fulfilling soon, and then they'll probably have stuff up for retail at that point. Grab it, because it'll sell out fast within a couple of days. Whatever extra stock they have will be, maybe a week or so, it'll all be gone. So if it's something that interests you, and you're thinking of doing it, pay attention to the calendar right now and jump in. You won't be disappointed. Again, if the cost is something, that is barring your entry, well, so be it, right? I don't like to associate monetary value and output, and value to gameplay. I play a lot of hobby games that cost money, and I see value in very simple board games too. And I know what underproduced and overproduced is. This game is not overproduced. It is what it is. It's meant to be like this and have big, colorful pieces. You can paint them. A lot of people do. I personally don't. I like my board games, to pop in different faction colors. It's just something I enjoy. I paint other minis. But again, it's you get what you pay for. And that being said, if you're interested, now is the time to probably start looking into it. So Cthulhu Wars, a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. Thanks for watching.